Gamers, today we are going to be discussing the Ayyubids. I've spent the day playing only Ayyubids. Obviously I've played Ayyubids before, I've played against Ayyubids, and I kind of wanted to give my honest opinion on what they are as of right now, what the future of Ayyubid is, and if I think something needs nerfing or buffing. I asked my Twitch chat, and initially I was going to do this kind of video where I upload an hour of gameplay showing you a couple of different games, what I've been cooking up with, what I've been playing, and then giving my opinion of the Civ. So initially I was going to do this for only the 6 new ones, but the chat wants me to do it with every single Civ, so let me know if you're also interested about that on YouTube. So basically I would play like French all day and I give my opinion on French and so on and so forth. So let's talk about Ayyubid. Right now Ayyubid is probably in the weirdest spot out of any Civ, not in terms of balance, not in terms of how bad good they are, just how cheesy everything feels, in my opinion. So I've played quite a bit. I've tried different strats. I've tried, you know, the Gamba wing, I've tried the eco wings, the military wings, the culture wings, and this is kind of what I've come up with so far. So in the last tournament by EGC TV, we saw a new Ayyubid build pop up, and that Ayyubid build was basically military wing reinforcement. You put some pressure with the Desert Raiders every 2 minutes. It gives you like 90 resources per minute, which is pretty decent. And then you age up to Castle with Culture Wing. You age up super quickly, and then you go mass Camel Lancers. You take the relics, and then you just kind of all in. So this has been a build that's been the most popular and that I've played against. I've played obviously some games with it, and I generally think this is by far the best build right now for the Ayyubid. I am like, I don't have any info, but I'm like 90% sure this wing will get nerfed, because not only it's cheaper, but you age up way quicker. It goes from 2 minutes to 1 minute and 12 seconds, and this also works for Castle obviously. So what ends up happening is your age up to Castle, you can start aging up at like 5:20 or 5:30, which is just nuts. And then you're in Castle at like 6:30, and you can produce Camel Lancers, and you can kind of start doing damage. Now, this build is strong. I don't think this build is overpowered. I don't think this is like an unstoppable build and it needs a nerf immediately. I think the bigger problem with this build is there's no time to react for the opponent. So it doesn't feel like, oh, if I push now, I'll stop the goal. It kind of feels like, instead of me like knowing or, you know, scouting what the opponent is going to do and trying to prevent it, it's like by the time your units arrive, the age up is happening. So I think any RTS game, doesn't matter if it's AOE4 or something else, if the gameplay works like that, where it's like you blinked and it's too late, I don't think that's a good gameplay, and it doesn't leave your opponent with a lot to do or to react to it. So again, I think it's a strong build. It's the strongest build for Ayyubid, but I think it just creates for kind of crap gameplay. So basically you just spam Camel Lancers, take the relics, and you go archers, and you kind of zug all in. I've been playing it. It's pretty good. It has some counters. You know, just like every Civ, Ayyubid has counters too. But that is a pretty good one. And then I've tested the Gamba Wing. Obviously, Gamba Wing used to be broken as hell, and it got nerfed, not only in cost, but you also cannot get villagers anymore, which was one of the biggest problems with it, because you basically age up and sometimes you can spawn 6 villagers immediately, and then the opponent just straight up loses the game. So recently the Bazaar got nerfed. You cannot produce villagers anymore, and I tried to make this wing work in both Feudal Age and in Castle Age. The Castle one seems really bad, like the units just died to the mass units and they died to Feudal units. So aging up to Castle with it, not great. Aging up to Feudal, you also have one less choice. So it used to be you get 5 choices and you can pick 4. Now you get 4 choices and you can pick 3. I think that's how it works. And like example, recently I went for the Gamba Wing and I got buy food, buy wood, buy stone, and I was like, okay. I mean, it is gambling, right? So it's like you take a risk. Sometimes you get really good stuff, sometimes you get pretty crap stuff. That being said, I can see Bazaar Wing being used on like Baltic, because you can age up with Bazaar Wing, and as you're fighting on water, you can send units immediately to the sides, or you can start trading, which is really nice. The Bazaar wing can also work on map like Prairie or like maps like Highview where the trade is in the back. So you can maybe put some pressure and then go trade behind it and kind of, go with that. But I think if it's like a Dry Arabia and your trade is like here or something, it's not really worth to set up a whole trade for it. And it's very RNG based what you're gonna get, so you kind of need to adapt in the moment. So I don't really know what to think about that wing. Like it's viable in feudal, but I would say if you're going for Bazaar wing, you probably want to do it in feudal, not later. And then we have the Atabeg, which is the advisor's trade wing. I found these pretty underwhelming, I'll be honest. When these came out, when the thing came out, when I saw this, I was like, oh, this is going to be used, this is going to be great. I've tried aging up with it in feudal. You get 2 Atabegs, and even if you're rushing castle, you put the 2 Atabegs in 2 stables, and the Camel Lancers have like 40-50 extra HP, which is nice, but then eventually you're going to stop producing Camel Lancers, and then you need to destroy the stables, and then you need to remake them in House of Wisdom, which they cost 100 gold, 100 food. So it's not like you can be like, oh, I'm done with stable units, let me put them somewhere else. You like have to destroy buildings to get them out. And then aging up with it in Imperial, it might seem really good, and I kind of feel like it has some uses where you go with Atabeg to Imperial, you get 7 of them. So now there's 7 production buildings that will spawn units with 20% health. But early Imperial, that's pretty nice. But later on in Imperial, when you have like 60-50 production buildings, doesn't really do much, kind of thing. Another place where I can see advisors being used is on water maps, because you can put these guys in docks. Now this has a lot of potential with that, because when you put them in docks, your ships get 20% more health, and that's a lot of health. And not only that, but you're not going to have 30 docks producing. You're going to have 2, 3, 4 docks producing. So if you can constantly produce military ship out of these 2, and then produce like fishing ships or demo ships out of the other ones, that's a pretty good deal. Then we have the logistics, which is you get dervish, which are like their monks, and their healing improves. This one is usable. I tried it in feudal. It's not great. Like you might think it's like Imam from Ottoman. It's not that great. It's pretty underwhelming. But you can age up to castle with it, and that's the only time that I thought it was pretty good. And if you're playing against like HRE or something, you can age up to castle and yoink the relics really quickly, because you spawn 3 in castle. So that's pretty nice. It has some uses. This wing is OP as fuck. It needs to be nerfed or changed, because the way it is just dumb. This wing is pretty interesting. Most of the time that I've played against or played with, I think that I've never seen people go for this wing in castle. So people either go feudal, where you can put pressure on your opponent, or help you defend, and your cavalry gets to produce siege, which is nice. Or you go for this wing in Imperial, and then you produce 7 of them, which equals to like, I can't remember the exact number, but it's like, I think it's like 630 resources per minute, which is pretty nice. You age up and you just spawn Desert Raiders, 7 Desert Raiders every 2 minutes. So that's pretty nice. But overall, I think this is a pretty good wing in both feudal and Imperial. Probably decent in castle too. But yeah. Military wing Mastersmith, this is probably one of the more useless ones. Like, the only time that I can see this is if you're like all-inning in castle, or you're about to die in castle, and you're like, oh, what do I get? I already have, I don't know, you already aged up with something else. Oh, do I go for, I need something to survive, and then you go this, and your upgrades finish if you have the initial upgrades, the first tier upgrades, and then you get some value there. But pretty underwhelming, I would say, because if you research this in castle, but you don't have feudal blacksmith upgrades, then you will not gain any of the upgrades. You have to upgrade the first ones, and then once you upgrade the first +1 attack, then the second one will come for free. So just not that great, in my opinion. Then you have this one, which is also one of the worst ones. Economic wing industry. You get 300 wood on age up. It's pretty bad overall. The only use that this might have is if you're playing against some kind of like maybe French or Jeanne d'Arc, and you want to age up or you age up, and then you only mine stone, you get some wood, and you instantly plant a town center, and then like you rush castle or something. Like when you want to build a second TC with no units whatsoever, this is something you can use it for, but I feel like even if you're doing something like that, it's probably better to just go military wing reinforcement and use that to defend your TC, and then you will get more value throughout the game, if that makes sense. And then last but not least, we got economic wing growth. I've used this sometimes when you do the castle rush build with Ayyubid. Going for military wing reinforcements is kind of pointless. Like when I played against Malian, for example, I felt that going for this is pointless because Donzos and javelin throwers counter this, and archers. So they can just make like 2 javelin throwers and your whole wing is going to shit. Like you don't really do much. So I feel like maybe against Malian or some other civ, instead of going this into castle, you can go economic growth. You get 3 villagers and your berries get extra food. So that's pretty nice because you don't really have another option. If you're doing a castle rush build, you don't want to go for Gamba because then you're just wasting resources instead of aging up faster. So this is pretty nice. In Castle Age you get 8 villagers, and then in Imperial you get 10, and your villagers get 10% gather rate. So that's something you can play around with as well. So with all that being said, I have tried 2 town centers. I have tried the Gamba Wing trading kind of style. I've tried castle rushing into, or castle rushing with Gamba Wing. I've tried castle rushing with dervishes. It has some play, like I said, but it's not like a play style. It's more like depending which civ you play. So overall, I would say that Gamba Wing, very situational. You can do it, but it's very, very situational, and sometimes you'll just get shit rolls and you're gonna feel like you're playing without a landmark. Economic Wing, I think, is fine, the one that gives you villagers. You can do the Castle Rush build. You can even do the Economic Wing into Castle after doing Gamba Wing or something like that, or you can just do 2 TC with it. Military Wing, pretty good. This is, like I said, pretty good. So, what do I think about Ayyubid? I think that 2 TC is viable, but if you compare this to the closest civ, which is obviously Abbasid, if I wanted to go like this or this into 2 TC, I feel like why not just play Abbasid, right? Because you are playing this civ that has these weird, interesting options. If you opt for 2 TC, I feel like you lose the value of the civ. Not to say that it's not possible to do it or it's not possible to win, but it's kind of like picking Mongol and going 2 TC. Like, why? You know? Just play like another civ. And I feel like that Ayyubid, a lot of people are still looking at it through the eyes of like, oh, it's Abbasid, so 2 TC is still a thing. Or still good to go, and I don't think necessarily bad, but I think that if you want to go to TC, there are better civs to do it with. And the current best build is, like I said, aging up with military wing reinforcements into logistics for fast age up and then spamming units. So comparing it to Abbasid, Abbasid has fresh foodstuffs that, you know, reduces the villager cost. Abbasid has composite bows. Abbasid has a lot of units that are really strong in castle especially. And you will just not get to the same amount of boom with Ayyubid that you would with Abbasid. And even if you go for a second town center, and let's say you go economic wing growth, I feel like after that, whatever you go doesn't really scale too well in the later on, but you do get 2 town centers, so you will have more economy. Now, one of the best things about Ayyubid is in Imperial, their Desert Raiders don't have a lot of health, but actually have crazy amount of armor. Crazy. They have like 13 melee armor or something like that. 12, 13, and like 5 ranged. Or, 5 ranged with the camel armor upgrade. But their best upgrade is probably the Blacksmith one that gives your units movement speed, and I think it's 25% attack damage after killing a unit. So this can snowball quite well, especially if you're playing on like Gulam, crossbow, hand cannoneer combo. It does not work on camels. So that's something that you can focus, something that you should play. Making like a lot of spearmen with Ayyubid or making a lot of archers is not that great because those units don't have high amount of damage. So they don't scale as well with, you know, when they kill something, they get bonus damage. So you want to make units that are gonna, you know, snap, get quick kills, and then boost their damage by huge amounts and kind of snowball with that. So right now, I think Ayyubid is, and probably not just now, but in the future, is going to be one of like the tricky civs. The civ where, ooh, what is he going for? Because another thing to mention, by the way, if you see that opponent is going for culture wing, you don't know if he's going for culture wing advancement or logistics. So I feel like this civ is, in a way, it's like made to be played tricky. It's made to be, to be wild, to be like in the moment. I don't think you're supposed to follow build order as you do with Abyssid, where it's like, okay, I go Eco Wing, I go 3TC, and then I age up with Military Wing. I don't think that's how it's supposed to be in the long run. Right now, we kind of have build planned out, but I think once that gets adjusted, maybe some of the other wings could use a buff, and then you will see Ayyubid being kind of all over the place. Like, one game you'll see a guy go Gamba Wing in Feudal because his market is in a good spot, like not here, for example. And then second game he might go Military Wing into Gamba Wing later on, stuff like that. So I think that as of right now, it's pretty straightforward how Ayyubids are played. But in the future, I definitely see Ayyubid being a lot more kind of versatile in what they can do. And I can see them being a civ that is very open in a sense that, you know how you play a Mongol and you expect a Tower Russian to trade? Like if you play against French, you expect knights. If you play Jeanne d'Arc, you can expect knights. If you play English, you can expect longbows. I think with Ayyubid, in the long run, if the devs do a good job changing and balancing the civ, you're not really going to know what the opponent will do. Unless there's something like glaring OP and everyone just spams that. I think Ayyubid is probably going to be a lot more wild and a lot more random than the Abbasid will, or as a matter of fact, any other civ. Like, to be able to have so many different landmark or wing options is quite wild, and you can kind of change the outcome of the game, and you kind of have to scout to see what the Ayyubid is doing. So as of right now, I think Ayyubid is in a pretty decent spot with the build it has. I would say right now it's an aggressive civ that can play later on, but it is not the greatest civ in Imperial. Another thing to note is if you get to that Imperial age, your traders do not give 25% extra resource on like wood or in food like Abbasid does. So their trade is just gold like every other civ. Even though their traders are cheaper, they don't scale as well into the Imperial, like I said, as some of the other civs. And it makes a big difference which wing you go for, Feudal, Castle, and Imperial, to know how you're going to scale into Imperial. So like if you do really good wings early on and then you do whatever wing later on, you might not, scale as well or have enough units or have enough economy or whatever else. Regarding the counters to Ayyubid, what I've found is any civilization as of right now that masses units versus the fast castle build is pretty good against it. So I played recently in tournaments against Ayyubids, and one of the best counters to Ayyubid right now, in my opinion, is Delhi, because Delhi can just mass crazy amount of units, and even if you age up to castle with Ayyubid, Delhi can still make Ghazi Raiders and kill, your Desert Raiders, your Camel Lancers, your Ghulams, your whatever, and Delhi will have so many units that even if you have like 10 Ghulams, Delhi's going to have like 80 units at that point, and you're just going to get swarmed. And because of that, and because of, in general, castle rushing builds are countered by mass units, even though the units are worse, you usually can just get, like I said, overwhelmed. And on, other civs that can overwhelm Ayyubids easily are Jushi's Legacy, I mentioned Delhi, Malian, Ottoman. All those civs do pretty well against Ayyubid. Maybe I'm missing some, but you kind of get the point what's good against them and what is decent into them. The civs that Ayyubid is great against is Knight civs. The reason for that is if you play against a Knight civ, you age up with military wing reinforcement, and the Desert Raiders will destroy Knights one-on-one in their melee form. And then if the opponent goes for archers or spearmen, by the time they do that, you're already in castle and you're making Camel Lancers. So it's pretty good into Knight civs, especially civs, not necessarily Knight, but cavalry civs that focus on that, because by opening with military wing reinforcements, you push them away from going any cavalry, and you kind of ruin their game plan, and you force them to play something they're not used to, right? I would say civs like English or, you know, some of the more infantry-based civs, it's like a 50-50. I don't think it necessarily counters English, or I don't think English necessarily counters Ayyubid. But in general, Ayyubid is good against knight civs and not that great against civs that can mass units. Because, like I said, compared to Abbasid, their economy is a bit weaker in a lot of different ways, starting from fresh foodstuffs. So you will not be able to match, even if you go for 2TC, you will not be able to match the civs that just spam crazy amount of units. Golden Ages seem really good on paper, and they are really good, but some of the stuff that Abbasid has, and I keep comparing Abbasid because it is a variant, I feel like is a lot better. You have the tier 5 where camel units attack 20% faster. I don't think you're ever going to be in a position where you're like massing camels and nothing else in like few units. I know that's like the point of the sim, or like that's what they wanted to do, but realistically you will have 10 to 20 camels in Imperial, but your majority of your army will be hand cannoneer Gulam with that blacksmith upgrade to increase their damage once they kill a unit. So you kind of want to have a mix of everything, and you don't want to stop making camels because the opponent might switch to like horsemen or knights and kind of dent you in. They also get siege units cost 20% less resources to produce, which is nice, but at the same time, by the time you reach that, you're already in Imperial, and usually at that point you don't really, like if you have 50 buildings, you're usually not going to struggle for resources. So while 20% less resources for siege unit is nice, it's not going to make or break the game in any way, because you lose a lot of the resources or bonuses somewhere else. So I would personally, regarding buffing and nerfing, I would personally like the advancement wing to be changed / nerfed, however you want to call it, because I just think it's bad gameplay. I don't think Ayyubid is OP right now or anything, and I would like to see buffs to some of the other wings and maybe make them even more different from one another that they already are, and they are very different, but I think some of the wings could use some help as like military wing, and where you get upgrades for free. I feel like that's pretty bad. Like, I would like to see something else done with it. Like, if that wing would research all the previous blacksmith upgrades, maybe that'd be pretty good, right? Let's say you're rushing Imperial or going Imperial and you're like, oh shit, I have 2 blacksmith upgrades. Getting that is then worth it because you get everything before. Or if you're rushing Castle and you age up with that and you get all the blacksmith upgrades until that point, that's really good. But that's the only thing you get, right? You get upgrades and that's it. So you can do a lot of timing attacks with it. But right now it seems pretty underwhelming. Like, if you are aging up with it to Castle, and if you already have the previous upgrades, why not just get the new ones too, right? You've invested so much already. Yeah, maybe the economy wing for wood, maybe it should give like 10% chopping bonus or something like that. You know, you get 300 wood, or maybe give it 200 wood or 250 wood, but get 10% extra wood chopping. So it's like, if you go the villager one, that it gives you 3 villagers and you get food and berries, maybe this one should give you wood and bonus on wood. So if you're playing more archer heavy comp or you know, wood unit heavy comp, then you go for that one. So there's a difference, and not just a one-time use. And I think having wings that do something throughout the game would feel more interactive with Ayyubids, rather than you got it and that's it. You know, you got your one-time thing and you forget about it. Because I think that military wing reinforcements, even though it spawns 1 unit for the rest of the game, you will always have a camel, right? So you will always debuff the enemy army without having to produce anything, and that's pretty nice value. Same thing with the Gamba wing, right? You go Gamba wing in feudal, but you're still going to have some use in Imperial, right? You maybe can buy stone, or you can buy wood, or you can buy traders, you can buy some extra units. There is value to it. Even the Dervish one, even though you get 3 Dervish, they still give increased healing to your Dervish. So there's a lasting buff, a lasting upgrade to your Civ. Whereas some of the wings, like I said, you just get them and you're done with it. And that's something that I personally don't like. And funnily enough, the wings that do that are usually the wings that, not usually, but are the wings that are not getting used at all in the current meta. The wings that give you something straight away and that's it, they are not being built. And maybe that's something to think about. So that's kind of what I think about Ayyubid. I think in the long run, they're going to be like a tricky civ, a very versatile civ. So far, I would say pretty good civ if you want to climb the ladder. Puts a lot of pressure on the opponent, but I am sure that Ayyubid is probably a civ that we will see a lot of changes to in the future, just because it is very unique, and I'm pretty sure that devs want the wings to be used, not exactly the same amount, but for the players to have option. That's kind of the point of the civilization. So that's it. If you're watching this on YouTube, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Check me out on Twitch. I'm probably live right now. And once again, I will be doing this kind of video where I talk about the civilization, what I think about it in the current meta and in the future, with every single civilization apparently. And I'm also going to do like a gameplay video upload with every single civ. YouTube gamers, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Twitch gamers, let's keep going.